Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and I've got a fascinating episode all about my favorite cryptid lined up for you tonight. First, a California resident comes forward about his encounter with a massive Bigfoot while he was driving in Klamath National Park. Then a bowhunter in Pennsylvania discovers that he isn't the only hunter in the woods one morning. And next, we have a possible encounter between a juvenile Bigfoot and a child. And then finally, 3 teen boys have a very close encounter with a terrifying creature while fishing. Well, the sun's getting low, so you better go grab your boots and let's ride to Bigfoot country.
Number 1. Hey, Tattooed Biker. I've decided to come forward with an encounter that I had in early August. I live in Etna, California, and occasionally I like to go out to enjoy the nature in nearby Klamath National Park. I've lived in this area all my 38 years, and I've heard all the stories about Bigfoot. There was a well-known story about a possible Bigfoot seen in the Marble Mountain wilderness several years ago. In fact, there was even a video associated with that incident. I'm not sure what the sighting was, but many locals here believe it was a Bigfoot. Although personally, I didn't really believe in Bigfoot at all until I had my encounter. It was late afternoon and I was driving along Sawyer's Bar Road out near the old reservation area. I was hauling some supplies for a friend. It was kind of overcast, but not raining. As I was driving, I noticed something big and dark moving up towards the road from the Edna Creek ravine on my right. It startled me because I just didn't understand what it could be. This thing was very, very large and tall, and, well, it was moving at a good clip. As it got up to the road, it grabbed a small pine tree and pulled itself up and over the edge. It flung itself onto the road and vaulted the width in a single long leap. There's a steep rise in the trees on the left side, but it ran up the slope like there was nothing to it. Well, it was definitely what people describe as a Bigfoot. But the size of this particular creature was astounding. This thing had to be at least 8 feet tall, and the body was massive and defined muscle, covered in a thick, reddish-brown hair that had a strange sheen. Not like it was reflecting light, but that it looked oily, I guess. I didn't get a very good look at the face, but it definitely had a human likeness. It crossed the road no more than 50 feet in front of me. After that, I hit the gas pedal and didn't stop until I reached my destination. When I finally stopped and got out of my truck, my knees were shaking and weak. I had to get back in the cab, fearing that I would just collapse to the ground. I just sat there for about 10 minutes trying to gather my thoughts, realizing that I had actually seen a real Bigfoot. I told my brother-in-law what I'd seen. He, too, has never believed in Bigfoot, but he was very interested in what I told him. He's a hunter and a fisherman who spends a lot of time out in the forest. He says that he's never seen a Bigfoot or come across any evidence, but from his reaction, I'm not all that convinced that he was telling me the truth. So that's my story. Signed, Carter. Number 2. Hey, Biker. I live in a fairly remote part of Adams County, Pennsylvania, and the event in question happened near my house in the Mashaw State Forest near Ticktock and Pine Ridge Lane. This was late October 1997. The forest here is mainly white pines and oak. It's at a high elevation, and there are enormous mounts of mountain laurel. On this particular morning, I awoke for a morning bow hunt. When I left my house to walk the half-mile or so to an area where I had seen some deer sign previously, I noticed that the weather was going to be perfect. There wasn't any wind at all, and it was so cool that the ground was a bit crunchy. While walking out to my stand in the dark, I got maybe 200 yards from it, and I hear this noise that scared the hell out of me. It was sort of like a howl, one like I'd never heard before. I tried to rationalize it as a wild dog or maybe a coyote, and then just continued on. A short while later, I was 25 feet up in my stand, watching the woods around me as the sun came up. Shortly after daybreak, I heard several deer crashing through the laurel towards me. I readied my bow, and 4 does came running within 15 yards. They appeared to be spooked by something. A couple minutes later, or so it seemed, I heard more crunching coming towards me. Again, I got myself ready just in case a buck was following them. The noise that was approaching me was, well, kind of strange. It sounded more deliberate as it closed in. I saw several flashes of brown hair through the thick laurel, and then I saw it. It was no deer. It was a creature, standing there on 2 legs about 7 to 8 feet tall as it ran by me. It never really completely stopped. I noticed, though, that it had matted hair all over it. By this point, I had already shit a brick, and just then I heard more sounds coming at me. 2 more Bigfoot were approaching very fast. These actually come to a complete stop, and I got a fairly good look at them. One appeared to be substantially smaller than the first one, and it was dragging a baby Bigfoot along with it. These also fled the area really quickly, and it seemed as though they were following the largest one. After all the strange activity ceased, I sat in my seat and checked my pants. I was literally scared to death. I also noticed that these creatures left a foul, garbage-like odor behind. Finally, I gathered myself up enough to get down out of that tree and get back home. I haven't returned to this spot since I had the encounter. Since that day, I've seen other evidence of activity here. I think this area is completely full of these creatures. Thanks. Signed, Rick. Number 3. Dear TB, I've lived in Pennsylvania all of my life except for 4 years in the U.S. Navy and 4 years in college. Take my story for what it's worth. On Thursday nights, I would go with my mom to play bingo at the Greenmount Fife Hall on Route 15, south of Gettysburg. I was about 13 years old at the time, which would have been the summer of 1961. There were other kids there, and we would play hide-and-go-seek and do all the fun stuff that kids did back then. Playing bingo wasn't one of them. The fire hall held shooting matches and constructed a target box in the lot behind the fire hall. I hid behind this target box during a hide-and-go-seek game. I remember that it was dark, maybe 10 p.m., and the area was only dimly lit by the outside lights at the fire hall. I was backing around the corner of the target box and backed into a big animal. I turned to see what it was, and I saw this human-like figure, a little over 5 feet tall, not really heavy, covered with hair, not like a bear, but long, like hair on the hooves of a Clydesdale horse. I remember the odor as being a musky scent, like that of sweat or deer musk, but very, very strong. I took off running then as fast as I could go to tell the others. They, or nobody else, believed me, and when we went back to see if anything was really there, we didn't see anything. I've often thought of that event, but I've sort of convinced myself that a Sasquatch wouldn't be found in a populated area like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but thanks for reading. Oh, and this area is full of small towns and communities, so I'd really appreciate it if you kept my real name private. Signed, Anonymous.
A quick narrator's note here. Now, I received more reports for, well, everything from Pennsylvania than from anywhere else. Not sure if it's because I happen to live here, or if it's just that strange around these parts, but I randomly received these last 2 Bigfoot encounter stories a few weeks apart. And although the incidents themselves happened with some 30 years between them, as far as I can tell from looking at the map, the locations of these two sightings are probably only around 10 miles apart as the crow flies. Make of that little bit of information what you will.
Number 4. It happened on a warm day in June of 2005, here in Clay County, Florida. It was around noon, and me and 3 of my friends had decided to go fishing, and we had cooked some leftover pork chops as bait. Now, since where we were fishing was on private property and we were trespassing, I've been reluctant to say anything about this before, but after about an hour or two of fishing, the older of my 2 friends said, "Hey, I think there's a bear in those palmettos." So I, being the oldest of the 3, decided to go over to the bushes and check it out. When I got about 10 feet from there, I see these 2 dark brown eyes filled with curiosity. I stopped dead in my tracks, and then this creature let out a loud grumbling sound. So naturally, being as terrified as I was, I let out a yell, which is when I could actually see the creature's eyes go from fear and curiosity to rage and anger. Then it rose up out of a crouching position to tower some 8 feet above me. I can distinctly remember the odor coming off this creature, and around the eyes there was no fur. The creature also had a very noticeable mark on its face, right above the upper lip. I can't really remember if it was on the left or the right side. The creature had a flat nose, kind of like a gorilla and human mix, and the skin was really dark and coarse looking. The creature also had extremely long arms, and there was no hair around the lips. The fur was really dark and knotted, sort of like a matted dog. So after the creature rose up out of the crouching position, we all ran up the hill to the house to try and find a camera and a 270. We returned to the scene several hours later to find the pork chops gone, the fish gone, and the poles scattered around the ground. We all had our shirts off since it was hot that day, and they were laid about 11 feet up on a live oak branch, with no sign of the creature anywhere. And then, about 5 days later, I was riding my bike down a trail that's by my house, heading to a friend's house who lives on Blue Jay Road, when out of the corner of my eye I saw something that caught my attention. When I looked at my left, I see a huge creature walking across the scrub oaks about 200 yards away. This was to the left of me by the swamp, which has since dried up. So I proceeded to quickly turn around and head back home. And since beginning the summer of around 2007, I've been hearing wood knocks in the woods by my house. Normally they come from 3 different locations, but sometimes there'll be 4 or 5. The knocks are about 2 to 3 minutes apart. I haven't wanted to report these anywhere else, because for 1, I was trespassing, and 2, I never really knew who to report them to until I started listening to your channel. Thanks, TB. Signed, Anonymous. And there you have it, gang. 4 true Bigfoot encounter stories from viewers just like you. So what did you think about these? I'm eager to hear your thoughts about them in the comments below, but please keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you've had a strange encounter, or maybe a brush with the unexplained and would like to share your experience, just send it to the email address in the description, and your story may just wind up in a future video. Thanks so much for riding with me tonight. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.